Welcome, listeners, to SHOCKTOBER!
My heart. I'm spooked, Cole.
The climactic episode of our third series of SHOCKTOBER. We are honored to have Mr. Casey Regan, cinematographer extraordinaire. If you've seen the movie Step, I'm sure you were quite impressed because that movie kicks everybody's ass. You cannot get out of that movie with a dry eye. There's no way. There's just no way.
Thank you.
I cried so many times during that movie. So yeah, welcome to Grande Bouffe. Welcome, listeners. As always, we are here to copiously consume international politics and culture through the prism of a single film and a different craft beer each week. For this week's episode, I thought the Sanctimonious IPA from Stone would be appropriate because Mom and Dad are nothing if not sanctimonious. And so I'll just read briefly what Stone has to say about this hoppy little beer. Stone's Sanctimonious IPA represents the elevated state of reverence that Stone extols for the venerable and almighty hop. Amarillo and Simcoe hops have been anointed to bestow their divine qualities on this sacred brew. This limited release is part of Stone's Hop Worship series. Glory be to those who imbibe in its freshest form and faithfully worship thy hop in the beauty of blissful bitterness.
Ooh. Prostrate thyself before the mighty hop. Pray to the hop.
Cheers to that.
Cheers. Great to be here, Cole. Thank you for having me. And may I say, as a fan of Grande Bouffe, how disappointed I am that you would sully such a great program by having me on.
Far be it from the truth.
How could you betray the listeners?
Far be it from the truth.
It's great to be here, man. Ooh, that is tasty.
Isn't that yummy?
It's kind of nice. Yeah. You know what? Well done. Well done, Stone. And the mighty hop. And whoever writes your copy. Yeah, man.
So I want before we tear into this to Mom and Dad, which I think is a little known horror gem. It's a true genre film because
certainly one I hadn't heard of.
It's a low budget movie. It was made for $100,000, so automatically it fits the bill of what people rightfully or wrongfully call genre in that mode. So I know that you have a movie called Ballet Now, which I've not seen.
Yes.
And I want to know more about that film.
Well, Ballet Now is a documentary following Tyler Peck, who is a prima ballerina at the New York City Ballet. She is invited to curate, creatively direct, and dance in a annual ballet showcase that they do in LA called Ballet Now. And her, what she is attempting to do is put this show together that explains like what the current state of ballet as she sees it, and she's the first woman to be invited to do that. It's this whirlwind of she has a week less than to put together this incredibly ambitious show full of ballets, and on top of that she's dancing in about 9 of them.
Wow.
So it's a movie that really shows like not even on top of the physical strain of how someone at the absolute height of athletic ability, that you need to be someone at the absolute height of athletic prowess and ability to dance ballet professionally, certainly on the world stage, but also how much patience and sort of creative discipline you need to put a show together like that. And it was something that it was exciting. I mean, it was something that I definitely walked away with more respect for what the ballet world is. It is a beast that like chews you up and spits all but the strong out. And Tyler Peck is someone who is incredible. It's like it's like being able to follow Michael Jordan around in like the NBA. Like she's incredible, incredibly talented, incredibly respected, and it's great to be backstage, quite literally.
Wow, where can people see that movie? I want to see it.
You can see that as well as Step on Hulu. Both are. Great. That was a Ballet Now was a Hulu production. It was a Hulu production, executive produced by Elizabeth Moss, who is very passionate about ballet as well. So Hulu for both of them.
Wow. And did it premiere at Sundance?
It did not. It premiered at Seattle International Film Festival.
Did it play at Sundance?
It did not. No.
Okay.
That one was a part of the New York Dance Film Festival last year, the name of which I am blanking on. But its official premiere was at Seattle.
Great.
And then it went right on Hulu after that.
All right, so there's a cue to all of our listeners,
Please
all of our
check it
Le
out.
Grande Bouffe listeners, dial Ballet Now up
Please.
on Hulu.
Please do. Tell them Casey sent you.
There you go.
You won't get anything from it, but nor am I sure who you're telling. But
My dad used to have a joke. He was a professional magician, so he had all these little one-liner quips that he'd always say. And so whenever my mom would excuse herself from the table to go to the bathroom, he'd always say, "Oh, give my name, you'll get a good seat."
It's great. Oh my god, it's so great when the dad lines that just prop up. that was in his repertoire forever. One of the magic ones.
Ice, the only thing in the world that is what it is cracked up to be. That's another one.
That's really good. Dang.
All right, so we're going to tear into Mom
and
Dad.
Yeah, like I'm sure, as you said at the beginning, like most of your listeners, I had no idea what Mom and Dad was when you introduced me to it. Definitely a movie that is right up my alley. I love,
shockingly so.
Right,
who would know?
I wouldn't
have guessed.
My professional work is very much of the wholesome variety, but I ingest like a lot of genre movies. I like the sleazier, schlockier, the better.
Oh wow, I had no idea.
I'm a big fan.
Oh, I got lucky.
So and this was perfect. And even more serendipitous was looking up Steven Sheil. Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Right.
Steven Sheil, before he made Mom and Dad, is a cinematographer of documentaries like myself.
Oh.
So I feel very connected. I feel very kismet with this filmmaker.
Awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. Where do we go from here?
I know a little bit, just a pinch of the background on this movie, that it was a British financing, I think through the government, where they provided $100,000 for him, for him to make this movie.
Incredible.
And so in the commentary, he's always talking about, well, we couldn't get this shot, we couldn't get that shot, and I just think that that less is more constraint can really help you, because I think that there's not a lick of fat on this movie. I think it's 85 minutes, and I think that not having the budget that would have given him those extra 40 shots, I think it helped the movie.
Right. He sort of got to swim amongst his limitations and like really find, like, yeah, definitely. This movie moves with like a real click to it. But also doesn't feel... It's just that perfect sort of chambered story that, like, I would be curious to... when we are done, I will probably look up more interviews with him, because I'd love to know how much of that constraint influenced... You say there were shots he couldn't get, but even just like in the writing process, like, we know we have this much. We know we can only do this. We can only be so ambitious. Let's write something very... I wonder if... let's write something very contained. Let's write something very simple. But that also utilizing some... I wonder if getting that funding through the government, he was able to get access to those those mind-blowing shots of like Heathrow Airport at the beginning, or at least planes, or this location that, I'm absolutely green with envy over some of the dynamic.
It's funny. He talks about growing up a mile from Heathrow Airport. So until he was 18, that was his whole childhood. And so there's all of this Thatcher realism, social realism, that's just built into the story in a very subtle way. There's not, he's not putting a fine point on anything, but you've got these working class people, Mom and Dad, who have these two adopted children, and they live right in it's practically in the flight path. The way it's off of, it's right off of the flight path where their house is.
Constantly being buzzed by jet airliners.
And so it seems that they have internalized the way that the government has treated them, and so in order for them to have province over their house, they have just become the worst narcissistic, evil people who are living out these demented fantasies of torture and sexual. A lot of it isn't even directly. It's indirectly sexual. It's crazy, when the mom, she's got strong lesbian tendencies, but she wants inexplicably she wants to stick a knitting needle through this girl's belly, and that's I think that's the first really gruesome thing that happens, and it is so freaky.
The first on camera bit of gruesome, yeah.
It's so freaky.
Well, it's so so much about domination, and that it is. When you're first introduced to the mom and dad character, you see them come out of two separate doors. The first being the dad comes out covered in blood, holding a bloody hammer, and as the door closes, we see the remains of the person he was just beating to death, I assume.
Yeah, the nude girl that he's just bludgeoned.
Right, and then out of the other door comes Mom, who is much more demure, sort of very hair done up in a nice 50s bob, and looks very maternal. And so I immediately, you're very obvious, the sort of play between the masculine brutality and feminine idea of sort of
the matriarchy and the patriarchy.
Right, exactly. But then the first act of, as you said, on-screen brutality that we see is from the mother, and it is a penetrative act.
Yeah. It's so visceral. It's really disturbing.
Right, and it's immediately flips this idea that or at least introduces that there's no our lead character is not going to escape brutalization from one versus the other.
So let's just set up the story a little bit.
Sure.
We have this girl who's cleaning toilets at the airport, and she's got her coworker, her new pal, who's been working there for a while, and the one who's been working there for a while, Birdie, I think is her name.
Yeah.
And she's very forthcoming, and she's obviously going out of her way to befriend this girl, and she wants to invite her over to her house. Mm-hmm. So there's this entrapment thing that happens where you've got this poor girl who's just gotten this terrible job at the airport.
Right.
And boom, next thing you know, she's not going to be able to make it home because she's been twisted into this kidnapping, really.
And it's very clever. I almost wish there was a part of me that I don't know how you do that, and when you're Googling a movie to try and stream it, but I almost wish I didn't know what the movie was about before I saw it, because I feel like it's actually very cleverly done, and you don't get a whiff of the nefarious intent of these characters until it happens. And I knew this was going to be a story about a woman being kidnapped,
right,
and tortured,
right,
but I felt like their method by which they Birdie was always very friendly. Birdie was seemed to be a character who was very quick to like, and then her mute brother Albie was, both of these people seemed I sort of wish I didn't know what was going to happen next, because until the Lena, our main character, is in the house and she gets thwacked over the head by Dad, you don't really see it coming.
Right. Birdie is played by Ainsley Howard, and Lena is played by Olga Fedori. And the way that I found out about this movie was this woman, friend of my wife, this is her favorite horror film.
Really?
And so she bestowed the DVD on me, and so I watched it cold. And I have to say, I was so disturbed by it. I thought, what am I going to... I don't even want this DVD in my house. I should just throw it away.
Right,
I'm never going to watch this thing again. It really sat wrong with me for a long time.
Right. It's like not the DVD you want to be in your player when you like have that heart attack and people come in and see, what was he doing right before you... Oh, God, Cole, no.
Exactly. So yeah, but
were you taken off guard by?
I was completely taken off guard and horrified, really genuinely horrified. I think that's a great thing about genre films. You know, these exploitation films is that, you know, you come across one once in a while that really just for whatever combination of reasons really just puts the knife right in your heart.
Yeah, even the shot when Lena gets bludgeoned and then they inject her to kidnap her the very first time. It's so... This is my, like... God, I love it so much. It's so understated. It's so... There isn't, like, a close-up of him coming out of the shadows or anything like that. It's just, like, a medium shot of her in a doorway, and you just see him sort of come into frame behind her. It's done very undramatically. And that, to me, is scarier than anything.
Well, and they're not using music. That's one of the things I really appreciate about this movie is that they're not trying to hit you over the head. They're not trying to punch up any of the drama. They're just letting it happen. They're letting it all just play out, and that makes such. Darren Aronofsky. Did you see Mother? Came out last year.
I didn't see Mother. No.
And same story. Aronofsky was really clever in not using music, and. I mean, come on! It's the less is more. Really works. You appreciate the drama so much more. I think
there's a specific shot, not to go too off path.
No, I want to hear. I want to hear from the cinematographer. I want to hear this stuff.
There's a specific shot in so when Stars or Showcase, Masters of Horror, was that Showcase or Stars?
I don't know.
Anyway, it was this series where they had it was a horror anthology series where they had world-class directors make these sort of one-off horror films, I think hour-long about. And there was one, so in college I got big into Takashi Miike.
Oh, yeah.
And in so much so that I needed to, like, totally dive in. I think I spent, like, a weekend watching every single thing, which is a feat with his filmography.
Yeah.
But
Audition, not the least of which.
Absolutely. And there's plenty of tendons, oh goodness, to use a horrifying term, that you could draw in between those two films. But there's a shot in the episode of Masters of Horror that he directed, it's called Imprint, and it's this, everyone please, like, go find it. It was the one, they never aired it because it was so disturbing.
Wow.
So, and this was a series with, like, Cronenberg directed an episode, like so many heavyweights, and also like heavy stories were told.
I think Ty West, did he do one?
Maybe.
Possibly. I don't know.
Anyway, he directed an episode called Imprint, and it's about Billy Drago, which is great. Plays this guy who's going back to this island in Japan, off this Japanese island that is just like an island for prostitution, essentially. He's going back to save the girl he met once and promised he would come back and fall in love. Promised he would come back and take her away. And he comes there and he finds out she's dead. And no one will tell him what happened except for this one, like, horribly disfigured woman who works there. And he pays for the time with her, and she, like, tells him the story. While also telling her own story, like how she came here, and then, but he keeps, like, badgering her, be like, it doesn't make any sense, like, tell me again. And she tells him the story 3 times, and each time you get a little bit more of what actually happened.
Nice. I love that layered storytelling.
Yeah, and I certainly will not spoil the ending because the ending is fucking nuts. But there's a shot there where she just finished telling him one part of the story, and he's sort of splayed out, like laying down, taking it all in, and he looks up at her, and there's a shot, and there's no cue, like, it's a sort of blink and you'll miss it thing, where it's just like a shot of her, and over her shoulder in the shadows is the woman that he's looking for, her face, like, in a horribly mangled sort of like scream of agony and horror. And then it cuts back to him and then cuts back to her and it's gone.
Yeah.
And that was like I needed to turn all the lights on in my apartment. It was like nothing. I still think about it and gives me chills just because it's so understated and small.
Right.
And that is the sort of thing that that's what freaks me out more than the jump or the even like at a certain gore will upset me,
right?
But especially like the sexualized gore in this one, but not so much that it doesn't linger with me in that same way that like that very understated sort of what happens in the quiet spaces does. And and there was a hint of that when when Dad comes in and bludgeons her just because you don't see him coming.
Right, and there's also that question about how long are they because we know that the girl who's left in the room that he's bludgeoned, she's gone, and so we're already thinking, well, why are they keeping this one alive, and how long are they going to keep this one alive? Your mind does all of these gymnastics about your imagination just runs wild about what's going on in this house of horrors.
What's the extent of how many rooms? You never really get a sense of like the geography of the house either, like how many rooms are just like horrible. I think it in a very good way, like you never really get a sense of like how many floors this place is. There's never really a like exterior like establishing shot of like this is the house.
Yeah.
Your mind is left to wonder like how many floors of horror is this? Like how many rooms, how many women are here and how many rooms, at least in the beginning, you wonder like
it really is a house of horrors.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that you like Lena you never really plant your feet in that place.
And Steven Sheil, the director, he talks about how he's influenced by these Freddie Francis films, these Hammer films from the 70s. And when you were talking just now about the subtlety, when I was a kid, I watched Dracula Has Risen, and that movie it opens where Dracula has murdered this woman and left her hanging from the bell tower of this church. And the bell ringer the kid goes in to ring the bell, and there's blood dripping from the bell. And he goes mute. And what an opening for a movie. It's all psychological, and that fucked me up so bad as a kid. Just seeing and it's story. It's pure story.
Yeah. It's also it terrifying, but you're moved forward. You're brought forward in the story, but also you're placed so well within the mind of the person finding this horrible thing. Like you're there. In this movie, like I felt so psychically close to Lena the whole time because of the information that I was lacking and the sort of horror as I was being introduced to it.
Well, and she's a smart girl.
Yeah.
She figures out, okay, I know I can outsmart my captors. I'll play along, and when I get my chance, like this is the way that you when you watch people and no, don't drop the flashlight. You're right there with her. Okay, she's good. She's keeping her head about her. She's gonna be able to escape this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I liked the very quick turn for her to realize that if I play nice with Mom, I'll have a better chance of getting through this thing.
Yeah.
I also loved the choices that the actor was making to the attitude she was giving to at a certain point, like during the Christmas scene. I don't know if we want to jump all over those.
Well, that's the only time that we get any music.
That we get any music.
We get that cheesy, really awful, just you never want to hear that music.
Right.
Cheesy Christmas music.
Because I feel like in a movie like this, I'm left wondering, like, I'll admit, I've never been anywhere near a situation like that, right? So, but you wonder, right? You wonder, like, what would I do?
Of course.
Like, do I fight back? And I felt every choice when she made it felt very honest and intelligent. Never felt like I'm the last person to ever think like, oh, I'm gonna fight off if someone's attacking me with a hammer, well, I'll just fend them off.
Yeah.
No, I would probably. I felt very close to Lena in terms of like I would probably play nice and then try and find little things to do, and then, but I loved it was the attitude she gave Dad during the Christmas scene when he was trying to make her drink and like talking to her, and just the dagger she was staring at. It just felt so. I felt like, yeah, I would. There's a certain like level of like fuck you that would come in.
Sure.
To like, it doesn't matter what you do to me anymore. Like, fuck you, man.
Well, and that's, I mean, it really can't be stated enough how terrific the actors are in this movie, because the chemistry between them, there's so much dynamic energy in every scene. The dynamic energy is so powerful in every scene, where Dad is this disgusting. I think I forgot to mention though that Dad works at the airport.
Yeah,
and he works in baggage.
Family business.
Yeah, and so when you come into the house, you see these unopened boxes that Dad has stolen from shipping at the airport, and so there's that social current is there about these people who they really are. They're on the bottom rung of society's ladder, and so this is how they exist. This is what they do. Mom makes the adopted daughter give her things that she's stolen from the airport, and so if she's in a way she's a pimp, because she's extracting goods from the daughter. The daughter has to pay up to earn her keep. This adopted daughter. This dysfunctional relationship is prevalent.
Well, it also. I was laughing thinking about the thing, wondering if the end, what gets them caught is the airport starts wondering like, where's all our baggage going? It's like not the body parts or missing people. It's like, well, we've had a lot of complaints on our website.
Yeah, like taking Capone for the taxes, for not paying his taxes.
Right, exactly. But it was it is very much the violence of Lena, when this movie was made in 2008, and the fact that Lena is a Polish immigrant into England is a very interesting thing, because that was, I mean, not the beginning of, by no means the beginning of Polish immigration into the United Kingdom, but there was a growing feeling at that time. The UKIP party in England is sort of like I forget what it stands for, but it's the party of like British nationalism, of like the idea of like you're playing up this idea that people are coming from somewhere else and doing work that should be going to like good native-born English people, and that is something that was gaining in popularity around this time. I think I looked at like voting percentages for like the UKIP party. 2008 it took a bit of a dip, but it was like in the coming years it would really gain a lot of steam. And I think that what struck me about this movie is it is all of the, you know, and something that this country has the same problem with is what you're saying is they're very much like a lower middle class family. Like they're working, if the dad's works baggage handling in an airport, like very much a sort of like knuckle dragging, like hard work for low reward, seeing a country change and feeling left behind, and that this is like this movie could be seen as a sort of the brutality that could lie dormant beneath this thing. Like in this country, that it could be, this movie would be made in this country now with like a day laborer from Central America. Like it's that same idea of like, and what really got me really into this idea was the breakfast scene. The next morning when she's at breakfast with them and they're eating breakfast together and they're having this like nice family meal, that while like, you know, the son is like disposing of body parts and things, and on the TV they're watching porn. Right. And while certainly and
we should say that the son, the adopted son, has some sort of he's mentally challenged in some way.
Yeah, they all seem to, there seems to be he doesn't speak.
Yeah.
And yeah, he his how much he takes part in what the family does seems to switch in between scene, or he seems to be the most conflicted with what they're doing.
And he's the whipping boy for the family. They really treat him like dirt.
But I got all into this. It is funny how much the scene is so what the scene could be like a meal, an average everyday meal seen through the eyes of it's everything. It is the brutality and the sort of over sexualization of like culture turned up to 11 as seen through the eyes of someone who is like coming into that country for the first time. Like I mean, Poland is by no means Poland is a Western country, but it's like if you were someone who was coming into British society for the first time and you saw like I don't know, music videos on TV, you'd be like, oh my goodness, what over sexualized media on television. And if you were to, the way that the sort of anger within people towards immigrants coming in and taking work, you know, open quote, end quote, that you would think that they're very violent people. I mean, just the way they speak seems very like violent. So this could be, that scene to me struck me as like, if you were watching an average British breakfast, that could be that, just like to the nth power.
I think it's a very salient point, and that culture clash. If you were, let's say, a foreign exchange student, and so you're going to stay with this family in France, the south of France for a summer, and you have this romantic idea, oh, we're going to be eating great baguettes and brie, and then it turns out that they're assholes,
right? or just like, just working class people
who just don't really care about you. They don't really care about making a connection with you or communicating. A lot of this movie, I think, has to do with the way that people communicate.
Yeah,
and that's for me. It's fast. You know, this is only the second time that I've seen it. I watched it the first time, and it was just. I thought, okay, that is a really horrifying, scary ass movie. But this time, I thought it was interesting about the layers of communication, about how mom and dad communicate. There's that really just awful scene where dad's masturbating and mom comes in and she's just gonna wait for him. He's masturbating with a heart or a liver or something.
With something. I that's the one part I rewound and I kept rewinding to be like, what is that? What's he using?
Oh, it's disgusting. But mom is just gonna wait. Right. Not gonna say anything. And so there's this really uncomfortable just denial of communication.
Right. Well, he is certainly, dad is the dominating figure in the household. And that is, I mean, I think most people would, or at least a cliche that happens to be true a lot of the times in like lower or middle class households is, my dad's great, but like that notion, all the times that they said like, you know, if you act up, like we're gonna get your dad in here.
Yeah,
like, that's the
right. And this is my house, and you'll do what I say when you're in my house, and all of that comes down from living in that society and the way the government treats its people, and it comes right into the household.
Right, and that's that's the masculine dominated nuclear family.
Yeah,
that is the way they communicated it in this movie was sick and really cool. Yeah, that scene when he's like masturbating with some body part, and everyone just waits for him to finish. And then also the scene when the son is when Albie is masturbating.
While looking through the
peephole, and then the dad like threatens him, but then tells him to finish up.
Yeah,
like there is and the scene when after they catch her trying to escape and they lock her in the suitcase and then beat her with the mallet. Yeah, and then he makes the son do it. Like there's such an amazing exaggeration of the way that
they're sharing this fetish they have their narcissistic fetishes that they condone and they punish.
Yeah, but also an exaggeration of how like misogynistic gender roles in like the male-dominated nuclear family get handed down. It's like Albie is being taught to be just as sadistic and just as like sexually controlling as Dad is. Albie seems to be a little more hesitant, but like it's definitely like, if not for, you're given a glimpse of like, if not for the events of this movie, this would have just kept going, and Albie would have been the like next in command, next in line.
I'm curious what you think about the lighting of the movie, because I want to hear what you think about it.
Well, I watched this movie. I looked up when I watched this on Amazon. It had like a little trivia feature, and there was the thing that struck me is they shot. Yes, I mean this movie's made for $100,000, and that is by no means a lot of money to make a feature film. But with that they shot this movie in 18 days. That's what I read, and they averaged like 27 setups per day, which is for what they were doing for the heavy material. That is a clip. That is a clip to move in. To like, I mean, yes, like all the technical aspects aside, to ask a group of performers to like do that fast, and that you got performances of that quality out of him, is pretty incredible. Like I think it's a testament to what control the director and the actors had on the material. But yeah, I guess in terms of the lighting, I think if anything, the look of this movie benefited from, I think, the pace that they were moving. Like, all of the lighting setups in this are all very stark and very stylized, but not ones where you have a multitude of sources coming from everywhere. It's usually like one source, which makes sense in this like sort of rundown home, that you're not going to have lamps everywhere, and you're not going to have like beautiful sunny days in this. I mean, from what I hear in England generally, but you're not going to have beautiful sunny days in this movie. You're going to have like some gray, some like little gray light creeping in from a window, but it's mostly going to be the one like old dingy lamp, or like the one spotlight that they have on the girl. So I really liked it. It really like it felt gross, like, and I think that's really good. I think like in a movie like this, you want to feel a little dirty and gross, and like the lighting in this movie really highlighted just how sordid and dingy and like disgusting this home was. And I think it benefited from just like, doesn't sound like they had hours to like set a scene. They sound like they had, let's throw something up and because we got to move, we got to shoot.
Yeah, I can't believe they shot that many setups in a single day. I mean, I'm sure they must have been doing 14, 16-hour days to even take a running start at that. I don't
to shoot a movie like that in 18 days is nuts. It's pretty nuts.
Gosh, I really hope that this filmmaker, I know that he did a movie called Dead Mine after this.
Yeah.
And now he's done television, but he's such a great horror director. I'd love to see him be at least half as prolific as Takeshi Miike.
I think he's got about 150 films to make before he's half as prolific as Takeshi Miike.
Oh my god, that guy never stops.
Yeah, it's a really, one hesitates to say it's a movie that is like very simply shot too. It's like very stark in the way that it communicates.
A lot of close-ups.
A lot of close-ups.
The special effects are amazing. That scene where she sticks the knitting needle through that girl's belly,
yeah.
That is so convincing.
Oh, yeah.
It's really visceral and just scary as hell. So I mean, the special effects department. I mean, when you have $100,000, it's not like they're handing you much to work with to start with, but
Sure.
boy, every special effect in this, I love it when she throws the teeth out the window and the mailman's down there.
Right.
Oh my God, it's just so it's a great example of how horror plays with your imagination.
Right. But also why, I mean, body horror is so great for a low budget, because it's not like you don't necessarily need to see someone be like vivisected to feel disgusted. Like those teeth alone were enough. Like the idea of just teeth out of a head is upsetting. Yeah, exactly. And or like the needle through the belly skin is like, we are so precious about these, these meaty meat bags that we carry around, so that any perceived like damage to it is very,
sticking the syringe right in her throat.
Oh yeah,
they make it so that she can't talk for the first day or two.
Right.
They take her voice away from her by putting this sticking the syringe right in the little soft spot of your throat, which is one of the most. I'm touching mine right now. It's so delicate. You don't want anyone putting something there. That's awful.
Right. I definitely found myself like squinching my as those scenes were playing. I found myself like drawing my chin into my body, protecting.
I think it's such an underrated movie. I think it part of it is probably it's a British film, and it clearly has a very British perspective. I really appreciate that. I like that about it, because from as an American audience, there's something more curious about it, because it's a culture that, no matter how westernized we think about London or England or the UK, it's different. There are things that are different, and so for me, it brought me into the movie that much more about, wow, there's a lot of stuff that around the fringes that I don't really understand.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna definitely recommend it to a lot of my friends that I know like this sort of thing. But yeah, it's not something that was even on my radar, which is, I'm very excited to have seen it.
So I want to know what's going on with you now. What are you working on next?
Okay, what am I working on now? So the same. I don't know how much I can say about some of these things. I'm shooting a new feature with. I'm shooting 2 new feature documentaries, both of which, one by each of the one from the director of Step and one from the director of Ballet Now. The one from the director of Ballet Now, I think we're close to finishing that one. I can give a very that. I think we just submitted that to Sundance last week. I've been sort of apart from the editing process, so any dates or anything I may not have. But that one I can at least give a plot of that. That one is following a.
That's Stephen Cantor.
Stephen Cantor, yeah. That one is following a high school boys varsity soccer team in a town in Oregon that is 50%. It's sort of cut in a perfect, it's this town that if you were to go there, you'd love it. It's like a brewery capital of, anyway, there's the most amazing beers brewed there. And so half the town is this very wealthy, sort of outdoors culture, a lot of breweries and restaurateurs, and they go there for kite surfing and hiking and biking and everything like that.
Cool.
And that side of town is also very white.
Right.
And then the other half of town is laborers who come up to work in apple orchards and cherry orchards and pear orchards, and so the town is sort of, and that's a lot of Mexican-born or Mexican Americans live on that side of town, and it's sort of you see where the town is sort of 50-50 split like that, but the boys varsity high school soccer team is the number 1 ranked in the state, and is also a perfect analog of the town. It's also 50% white, 50% Mexican, 50% people who are focused, have been raised or have been raised with few. I don't want to say they don't have. Everyone has issues. Everyone has problems. I'm trying to find the right words for it, but it's sort of people who've been raised on well. They're like college focused. They're heading out, and then other people some people on the team are just like they're looking to just graduate so that they can get a diploma and get a job in the orchards and the team is a perfect analog of like where that works in the town and where it doesn't work, where it separates, where people across that cultural and economic and racial divide are communicating well with each other and where they're falling a little short. I think it'll be a good one. And then another movie with Amanda Lippitt, who directed Step, that I don't think I can talk about right now. I just don't know. I'm sure it's not a Marvel movie, but it's still I would need to check before I could say anything.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
And then besides that, I'm just doing the DP grind, trying to go to CaseyRegan.com if you want to book me.
There you go.
I'm open.
I like it.
Please, something. No, I got some really exciting things coming up. It's it's been good.
All right, I'm gonna. I just want to peek at.
Please peek.
I'm peeking at IMDb because anything that's on IMDb, I figure, is fair game.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just gonna peek.
If you peek
at Amanda Lippitt's, director of Step, which is an amazing documentary. If you guys haven't seen that movie, dial that up with your significant other as soon as possible.
Get the tissues ready too.
Oh boy, no question. Okay, so we do not have anything coming up for her. So it is indeed under wraps.
Under wraps, but definitely something. She is. Keep an eye on her. She is like a. I've never worked with someone who is such a powerhouse. I will sign on to anything she does just because I know it'll happen and I know it'll be exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so as we are wrapping up this episode of SHOCKTOBER.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
Get a warning.
I know it's scary. I know. But that's what the point. It's supposed to, Anyway, there's a movie out there called. It's a crazy title. It was released as Girly, but the original title is Mumsy, Nanny, Sonny, and Girly, and that's a film that influenced this movie. So since we're talking Halloween, I want to give people little Halloween ideas. Freddie Francis directed it. And of course, Freddie Francis was cinematographer turned director. And there is also another little movie that influenced this one called Frightmare from 1983. So for all of you gorehounds out there, you might want to do a little Halloween triple feature. You could just dial them up. Go for Mom and Dad and Frightmare and maybe Girly. And I'm just putting it out there that we know that this filmmaker was influenced by those others. So you're gonna be on common ground if you go with those three.
I'll have to check it out. And can I make a recommendation?
Please.
In the other direction,
yeah.
If you were hesitant about the horror and gore and genre of it all, but really liked to delve into the cultural nuances of the United Kingdom, if that's why you went and saw Mom and Dad,
nice,
about the sort of cultural nuances of middle class United Kingdom.
Uh-huh.
I've been pushing this film on everybody. I saw it when I went to Sheffield Doc Fest with Step.
Okay.
There's a movie out called Brexitania. It's by an Australian filmmaker named Timothy George Kelly. It's amazing. It's this documentary shot in black and white 16 millimeter, so it's gorgeous. And this person went around and shot hundreds of interviews across the United Kingdom. He framed them all beautifully, sort of like center framed people. If they owned a sheep farm somewhere, he'd put them on the sheep farm. If they owned like a store in London, he just put together these beautiful framed interviews, and he asked people why they voted Leave or Remain in the Brexit vote, and then he edited it later so that it reflected how the vote shook out. So if I don't know the exact numbers, but if it was 55% voted to leave and 45% voted to remain, he gave 55% of the movie's runtime to people talking about why they said they'd leave, and 45% to why they say they voted stay. He tried his best to do the right amount of runtime percentage to like different cultural identities.
I love that. I love that setup. That's a great conceit.
It's a really interesting. It is a beautiful film, a very good film, but also it speaks a lot to like a shared. It's weird. It's like it's a movie where people are talking about why they voted one way or the other, and on things that people have had wildly different opinions about. But I watched that movie and left with a bit of hope, only because it was like everyone. What everyone shared was this feeling of anxiety, which things seem bad and we don't know how to fix them. So if there's anything, if that it is nice to at least be united in that way.
What's the title of it again?
Brexitania.
And
then there's a second. That's sort of the way I explained it was like the first 3/4 of the movie, and then the last bit, the person gets interviews from like Noam Chomsky and other like cultural experts and philosophers talking about like why things happen. It's really great.
It sounds awesome. I really want to see it. I would love for you to come back on this show and for us to talk about it, because as much as I love Shocktober,
sure.
I also really like to dive into the political stuff, and that sounds like a fascinating social study.
Yeah, man. And I'd reach out to Tim George Kelly. He was a real fun dude. I don't know where he's based, but he did his interview at Sheffield with a Guinness in his hand, and he and I had a great time. He's a really fun dude.
I love it. Well, you could have both of you on the podcast.
I'd be into that.
Maybe I talked to my wife. We could record it down at the Blind Tiger.
Hey, it's not bad. But yeah, look, I'd love to be back. Oh, I'd love to be back. Anything you want. The schlockier the better. Also, I love a good sleaze horror movie.
Perfect. And who doesn't love hoppy beer? Cheers.
Absolutely, cheers. Thank you, Cole.
Casey Regan, thank you very much, sir. I want to thank all of our listeners in Morocco and the Arab Emirates and Scotland, Canada. We have so many listeners. Le Grande Bouffe.
Oh my goodness.
We have people all over the world. That's one thing I really love about podcasts is that people everywhere can listen to it. And I want to encourage everybody to please go to colesmithy.com, where you can contribute as little as $5 a month to help keep Le Grande Bouffe, the Big Feast, going. And please remember to turn your cell phones off when you're walking, driving, riding a bicycle, or watching a movie.